they'll say Guiver or something. They'll try to make it French. And
Matt Guiver.
Yeah.
So
thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on the show.
Absolutely. So we got you here today. You are one of the owners of NASA Utah, right?
Correct.
And what is NASA Utah?
NASA Utah is National Auto Sports Association. We're the Utah region. It's a motorsports event hosting company, and basically there's, I think, 13 regions across the country. So Northern California, Southern California, Texas, Arizona, Utah, so on and so forth. Basically, we're club racing events. We host events that are designed to promote motorsports and get drivers involved or enthusiasts involved in motorsports. So the idea is you might not ever have driven on a track before, or not even know you want to drive on a racetrack, but we provide opportunity and create an experience that hopefully engages you and gets you started on the motorsports career. So drivers start up with NASA and similar programs like ours. Maybe the first time on the track, they show up in their perfectly good street car. I put an instructor in the car with them, right seat. The instructor tells them what to do and what not to do. We have group meetings and discussion regarding sort of in a classroom environment, how you behave on a track and how you handle yourself. And our goal is to create the safest and most enjoyable experience for you to drive your car on a racetrack. This
is 4 wheels, not 2.
Correct. We are 4 wheels only.
Okay.
I've done the 2-wheel thing as well, but that's a whole nother program. So we host 7 events a year, typically throughout the driving season. One weekend a month during that peak kind of warm season in the Utah. These events consist of lots of different groups running all at the same time. So the beginner group might go out on track and drive around on track and share the track with other cars. And it's usually a very low car count to create a pretty safe environment for them. Controlled passing zones and, instructors in all the cars. And they might, that DE1, that we call it HPDE1, high performance driving event, level 1, they may come off the track and then level 2 will go out, or a race group will go out. So you have all these different groups. The idea behind the program is you start in beginner group, and over the period of time, you advance through the driving groups with direction and instruction from our group and your peers. You learn from your community quite a bit, and you work towards a racing license if you choose to. Some drivers don't want a racing license, but some drivers do. This experience typically takes a really committed driver 1 to 2 years of participation and regular participation to achieve that driving goal if licensing is their goal. And NASA is really kind of built around club racing, and the concept there is like club racing is what I call you on the weekends, getting your car out of your garage, putting it in your trailer, driving to the racetrack, or driving your car to the racetrack like I did for the better part of a decade, racing my car on the track and then driving it home again and going to work on Monday.
So in the same car?
In the same car, typically.
Nice.
Yeah. I might change my brake pads and change my tires. And I have lots of advice going down that path for another conversation perhaps. But the idea is you driving your car on the racetrack and enjoying it. So that's club racing.
Because you got a 9 to 5 too, so you're doing all this with a 9 to 5.
That's right. Which is going back to the club racing experience. That's sort of the expectation on average for most of the customers driving with us. On any given weekend with NASA, we'll have 150 to 200 drivers, most of which are going to day jobs just like the rest of us. Like I've been hosting events for over 20 years, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that because they see me as typically a driver role or even in some cases a young man, even though I'm not so much anymore. So I've been hosting events and organizing motorsports events and the most successful motorsports events in Utah for the better part of 20 years. But autocross is how I started, and that is an interesting program because it teaches you a lot about car physics, which for me, kind of as an engineer in my day job, that gives me a really good foundation on what to do with a car and how to make it do what I want.
I want to go back to when you were just talking about the garages and the camaraderie and everything like that with people and stuff. Mm-hmm. That with motocross, man, we had a family. You know what I mean? Like you knew everybody. We sat next to everybody. The whole working on motorcycles and stuff like that.
And someone comes over.
Dude, we had motorcycles in hotel rooms. Like, you know what I mean? We had freaking engines sitting on beds using the towels and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They probably hated us. And then we're all like 13-year-old kids running around, jumping in and out of the pool and running through but it was so fun, and it was a family for several years that I was there. And I was going to start racing GP. Mm-hmm. So I was sponsored by Plaza Cycle, and the plan was that I was going to start racing street bikes.
Yeah.
So how did you like that?
Racing street bikes for me, I liked it a lot. I started that back in 2007 or 8. My exposure to to sort of, I don't know, I hesitate to say this, but like starting motorsports in Utah for four-wheel enthusiasts, my constant exposure to that and running those programs really stressed me out. It made it tough for me to enjoy driving in my events. Like the whole point of me hosting events was because I couldn't afford to drive in the events in and of themselves. I couldn't afford to be a customer. At the time when I started doing all this stuff, I was making sub $20,000 a year. Like there's no way I could pay rent, eat, and race cars.
So if you host the event, you can be in your event.
Yeah, exactly. I could be in the event. I didn't have to pay my entry fee. And typically you find yourself in this role of mentorship where people are looking to you for experience. So one of the questions always asked me, oh, you're a race car driver. What do you drive? I'm like, everyone else's cars. Because like, that's the role I play, right? When I'm a mentor, a teacher, and an instructor, I end up driving their equipment, showing them fast lines, teaching them how to do it. So I never had to necessarily field my own race car. And this is also one of the ways it was able to be affordable for me when I was making, $8 an hour. Going back to your question about motorcycles, I started racing motorcycles because I was so burned out hosting events and trying to drive in them that I couldn't enjoy the racing experience. So I started racing motorcycles. And I very carefully avoided interaction with the community because I did not want to get sucked into any kind of relationship or role that would then end up putting me back into a role of like management and administration or helping. I just wanted to be a customer, really, right? And it's funny, some of
the alter ego. You got this like ego. hidden lifestyle, so you can enjoy something.
That's sort of where the story of Matt Who came from. Because one day I show up at this racetrack.
That's your Instagram, huh? Is Matt Who?
Who the hell is this guy? So the story of Matt here, they see Matt on the timesheet. They're like, Matt Who? So it started there. And then throughout the time in these two environments that I'm in, motorcycle environment and car environment, you mentioned alter ego. I had sort of carefully separated them so I could have my, enjoy racing again. And these groups would tend to recognize me as motorcycle Matt or car Matt. So I'd be with like one group of them and they'd say, oh, I'm here with Oleg and Corey and Clint and Matt. And they're like, Matt who? Because they didn't think of me in that environment. They think of me in car environment. There's no Matt they know that rides a motorcycle because they think of Matt that drives cars and then vice versa. So it started this narrative of Matt Who going way back. But I did really enjoy motorcycle racing. It taught me yet more stuff that I still use today in automotive racing and also teaching others how to drive. Plenty of times, not having worked on the bike at all since the last time I touched it, like headed into turn 3 on West Track, which is about a 85, 90 mile an hour corner where you're knee down, wide open throttle, trying to, click fourth, fifth gear coming out of the corner. You enter 3 at like probably 80, 85 miles an hour. You exit 4, which is all kind of one big connected corner at about 120, still knee down. And I found myself on the brakes, really trying to trust this front end not to crash me. Thinking, did I tighten the pinch bolts on the calipers or, on the fork clevis that, when I changed my front tire, like you start thinking about all the things like back and suddenly you just missed 5 feet past your apex because your mind went backwards to another time and place at the worst possible time. And then you're like kind of standing the bike up, trying not to run off track, 2 wheels off, big scary moment, come back on. You're like, what the fuck am I doing? So the 6 hour for me is a little bit special because with all the noise and cacophony or chaos surrounding events, all the complaints and all the praise and everything that goes with running an event like this with 300 plus participants, it's really hard to stay focused on just being a driver. So taking that last stint I mentioned is very interesting because once I get in the car, it's very stressful getting up to this point, but once I finally get in the car and start driving, my world shrinks down to this little bubble of light traveling around the racetrack. It's very dark on this racetrack. There is zero light on the racetrack except for what you bring. So I have this little bubble of light that travels around with me and becomes my reality. And I can suddenly disconnect from all of the noise, stress, and anxiety that goes along with making sure everyone has the experience they deserve. And I can focus on just what I want to do. And so this bubble of reality becomes like, I'm not a spiritual person, but this is probably the closest I could get to spiritual. Like it becomes very important to me and arguably a way of life for the next hour and a half.
Well, how'd you get black flagged so fast?
I'll continue. I'll get there. So like they've taken no action about any of this incident. So as I'm starting Watkins Glen race 2, I'm starting on Sunday. And we're, 24th out of 32 or something like that. And my pace should be up in that top 10. I'm like, I need to move forward. Of course, all of us are saying the same thing. Fucking send it. Let's get there. Let's go. Let's do this. So I start pushing hard early on in the race where I normally would lay back a little bit to save my tires and let people crash into each other and sort themselves out of the race. I start kind of pushing hard and I'm trying to make up positions as I'm doing it. I make up 5 or 6 positions on the first 2 laps. But I'm I'm working through this field that's kind of putting themselves in different places on the track, and so they're being a bit unpredictable. Leads to me having contact with another driver. I do what's called a punt. As I'm approaching the corner on the brakes, I see there's a high rate of closing, meaning I'm closing very quickly with this driver, so he's overslowing at the apex. He's left the lane down on the inside, and I'm not looking to pass the driver, but I'm looking to use that lane for slowing my car down. I need that extra 10 feet to continue slowing my car down, so when I do get into him, it's a very small contact, and we both continue. Because at this point, I've decided that contact is imminent. I'm going to make it as small as possible. So I add a bunch of brakes, I straighten the wheel, and as soon as I get the car slowed down a little bit more, I add some more wheel to get off the brakes and like turn the car, and then I get back on the brakes and stuff. All these things I'm doing to try to mitigate this impact as this driver is continuing to come backwards towards me, right? Meanwhile, we're slowing down so much that an opportunistic driver behind us goes, oh, cool, these guys are going way slow. I'm going to drive around the outside of them. And that speaks to how slow we were going, is the fact that this driver could literally drive around the outside of us. But unfortunately for him, when I punted the car in front of me, when contact was imminent, that car slides, and the car that was going around the outside of us is a huge hit. So had that car not been there, both of us would have continued. There was no damage on my car or the car that I touched. There was no damage on our cars after the race. We would have continued. And if I had gained position because I had punted him, I would have been forced to give that position back by the rules. And I would have. My goal was not to take the position. But the consequence of my actions was he ran a car width wide from contact. And when I look at the video, you can see multiple things. He's closing the door on me. I'm looking for a little bit more real estate. I'm running out of real estate, trying to back out of him more. Inevitable happens. He goes wide, collects the car next to him, and this is a big off. Now, 2 cars are out of the race as a cause of this initial incident. So the first thing I said is, you caused the incident, you're done. Black flag. Bring him in, get him out of the car, he's done. And it was frustrating for us because, like, A, they made the decision based on the broadcast footage, and it was a hit from the hip call. They had no real insight as to what was going on. They just saw the broadcast and said, that dude. So I went, they said, report to the stewards immediately. So I get my video card, and I'm like, all right, I'm going up to report to the stewards. And when I get there, they're like, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm here because I was told to report to the stewards. And this, by the way, at Watkins Glen is a long-ass way. I had to get in a car and drive like 1.5, 2 miles all the way around the track. I've spent 10 minutes climbing 3 stories of stairs to get to this tower. And I get there, like, what are you doing here? You know, I'm hot and sweaty. I just got out of the car, and I got my gear. I'm like, well, I'm here because you were told me to report to be here. Oh, well, we needed to tell you that you found at fault for the incident that caused 2 cars to be wrecked out of the race, and your race is over. And I look back at my car that's 2 miles away sitting in pit. I'm like, well, I know my race is over. I'm here.
I'm here.
My car is there. Like, that's obvious. You literally dragged me up here to tell me that you found me at fault, which you've already done by black flagging me. And I said, by the way, what evidence did you use to find me at fault for this incident? Because I have my video right here, and you have no in-car video. And they're like, oh, the broadcast. Well, I'm like, I don't think that tells the whole story. There were multiple cars involved in this incident. They all played a part, and I think you should see my video because it has all this information. Okay, well, give it to us, and the race director will review it.